Hello, Vera. Thanks for joining me here today.
Hello, that way. I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah. For anybody watching, I'm organizing, my name is Dawei. I'm organizing an Expand the Box training from the context of possibility management in California, Northern California, and it'll be this May 25th to 29th, 2023 this year. And so you can reach out to me at Dawei Chou-Ren, DAWAYCHOUREN at gmail.com if any of this sounds interesting to you. And I have Vera Franco here, who is sort of uh, an amazing person because she is really gone to places that I think not many people have gone in her own research and her own exploration of what can happen in training spaces and and how to hold training spaces as well. And so, Vera, I guess my first question for you is how, why, what is your purpose for holding the types of trainings that you hold?
Mhm. Thank you, Dawe. So yes, my name is Vera Franco. I am a possibility management trainer. And so I'm one of these lucky people that have found what they wanted to do. Well, why they're on this planet, like what's the work that I just really turns me on that I sometimes when I speak about it, I almost I can't believe that I could find it and I could be so aligned with this kind of work. And the reason that I know is the purpose of the work that I do is really to empower people to really find out what is it that their vocation is, what is it that they're um just to so that they're lucky as me that they really find the thing that they have, the talent that they have, the genius that they have, and unfold that genius and apply it to a thriving life on this planet. And so this is kind of really general, but the importance of the training spaces is that there's not many spaces in this world. Like most people go to school, and in school you learn about basically about how to be in the current mainstream culture. You learn how to become a good student. You can learn how to have certain grades that will make you get into a kind of line of work or industry that are at the moment playing into this role of keeping modern mainstream culture that is very extractivist and is capitalist to continue to do the things that it's doing to the planet. And there's not a lot of spaces for true genius and true creativity. I mean, even when speaking about true genius and true creativity, a lot of people think about some kind of innovation, mental, intellectual innovation. And but I'm talking about creativity and genius and capacity for creating change and capacity for creating the structures and the spaces and the social networks and the cultures and the organizations and the worlds and the societies that each one of us wants to live in. And there's not a lot of schools about that. You don't go to school to learn to make a school that it would be completely different. And so these spaces are really to empower the true nature of a human being, which is to be a creator, to be really a person of incredible agency and um and and flourish and fly and really fly. Yeah.
Yeah, can you say more about this concept of agency and creation? Just from having known you, I know that you have a really deep relationship with these energies. And can you say more about what it means to you for a being to have agency rather than, I could be working in a big corporation or I could be working in my family business and there's lots of types of agency where I choose my own project, etc. And just from knowing you, I know that you have another view of how a being can really operate from its own center.
Yeah. So Thank you. When we go to school, when people go to school, actually, it starts even earlier than going to school. Like a child is born and it's completely dependent on their parents to grow, to survive. Because a child cannot really take responsibility for their own survival, cannot even cook, cannot even feed themselves. And it's totally appropriate. We are, as babies, we're totally dependent, and we're meant to be nourished and cared for by adults, by responsible adults. And then at some point, the child is meant to grow up. It's meant to go through initiations to become an adult. But what it means to become an adult is not just, okay, I'm 18, I can drink or drive a car, or I'm 21, or I can legally kill people in the army. No, adulthood is not an age, is a stance, it's an orientation in life that stops being about consuming resources in the village, in the society, and it's about producing, about participating. It's not so much about producing, but it's about participating in a creative way instead of a consuming way in society. And so, because in modern culture, years and years and years ago, in indigenous cultures, there used to be a lot of initiations that would make this transition, these really authentic rites of passage that would help a child, an adolescent, grow into the adult, into the participant in the village. But now we don't have so many indigenous cultures that are that have the same kind of social fabric with the same kind of integrity and the same kind of nobility. And we also have this modern culture, this modernity that completely revoked all of these initiations. And so the child doesn't grow up. And so people grow up in sized bodies and age, but their capacity of creating out of nothing, to create really how I want to have my own type of relationships, how I want to have creating a whole line of work that doesn't exist in the world, and create a whole type of organization that is centered around completely different values than earning money or status or selling anything. Like, and I'm just saying really ideas that other people have thought, like how many other ideas and ways of being in the world, of creating in the world, that we have no clue about, because they do not fit into the current way of being in society. So that's why a person of true agency would not be trying to fit into the conforms of whatever organization or corporation that you work for, or a school, or even the parents' culture. Like how do I celebrate Christmas? Do I even want to celebrate Christmas in the same way? Do I even want to? What if we celebrate a whole completely different holiday and call it something completely different? What about schooling? What about unschooling? And how about living together not in family groups, but as groups of people with different ages, that even the child doesn't really belong to just one person or two people, two adults, but belongs to the whole group. I mean, these are radical ideas that have been, have historical, there's a historical researches of these experiments that have happened, but they're usually they blow up and then they kind of die because they don't fit into modern society. And so a true person of agency will create the society where these experiments can happen and can flourish and can be taken into a depth. Because, to be honest, like, current civilization is going down. I mean, with the climate change, we need to really find completely different approaches to life. And this is what a person of agency can really do, can create completely different societies.
Right. So a person of agency is not just, being able to be really competent in, some sort of track in life, but actually having the internal strength, the internal structure to develop a value set that doesn't come from somewhere else. So So for me, when I think about this, what I'm hearing is for many years, I kept developing competence, but not actually my own agency because I was still running this meme in my head of I have to make a lot of money. And so even though it looks like I'm very competent, I don't have agency because I'm still not developing my own intuition for what is actually important to me in this world. Is that
Yes, completely. And a lot of the competence that most people in modern culture develop, it's very mental based, intellectual based. So it's a lot of critical thinking, a lot of rationalization, a lot of analysis, a lot of processing of information. But what about the competences of feeling, feelings and emotions, being able to communicate from an empathic way, being able, what about skills even that go beyond that? Like the skill and the value of presencing, of witnessing, truly witnessing someone without pushing anything on them in such a way that another person feels seen to their core. And the act of being witnessed in such way is healing and it's transformative. I mean, there have been saints that had been that we know that have had this capacity, or at least that capacity has been told and has been documented. But this is in every single human being's spectrum of competences that we can develop. But presence is not a high value in modern culture. Your capacity to feel and be emotional and use those emotions to better inform where your work, where your business is going to go, where your strategy for developing your next project is going to go. This is so unpopular because there's this whole idea that to earn money, to be successful, you have to mute. You actually have to numb your heart, to numb your emotions and your feelings. And actually, this is we just haven't really learned to mature your feelings and emotions so that you can use them for whatever conscious way you want.
and and what I hear from a lot of participants is this can sometimes be really scary for them. This idea of letting certain emotions come up, and it can be a long process for people to learn how to do. How does this work go? And also the other worry I hear sometimes is, uh, well, I keep my anger in check for a reason. I don't want to become just this angry, destructive mess. My father, I remember when I was a child, my father was drunk and angry. How does this work go with feelings and emotions specifically?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. Um, Me and a lot of other possibilitators, and I'm sure you've had this experience too. When holding a space, for example, in a rage club, which is a super brilliantly clear and safe space for people to express and to find how it feels to feel their own rage, their own anger, and then express it in a completely safe and responsible way. A lot of people just start, but I'm not angry. I just don't feel angry right now. Like, how can I even do this? And that there's this idea, the first idea is that anger is only violent, or anger is only about when something is wrong, and when something is not working for me, and or something is like I'm going to do something, I'm going to overstep on someone's toes. So automatically most people just tone it down and just say I'm not angry. And so what I say is, what actually I hold space for is for people to just suspend all that they know about anger and say, look, let's see really if you can't feel anger right now. Because actually, if you can't feel anger, then you can't feel your muscles. Then you wouldn't be even standing upright. You'd have almost no strength in your body. But most people don't think of anger as a kind of strength, as passion. They would think of it as negative. And so we completely rewrite the story of what anger is and create this incredible space where people don't go into another concept of anger. It's not like replacing a concept with another concept, is that they have an experience. They finally, after all these years of being told that your anger is bad by parents, boyfriends, girlfriends, bosses, family members, friends, they can say, this is my anger, and I didn't hurt anybody, and I didn't hurt myself, and I felt alive, and I could see why I have this anger, because what I'm angry about is what I care about, and that means that is important to me. And that's, wow, that the realization comes so naturally to these people, that I have a heart because things matter to me. And if they didn't matter to me, I wouldn't feel it, but because they matter, I feel. And it's suddenly this big welcoming of, I'm welcoming the things that matter to me. And now I can fight for them. Now I can create them. It's a completely change of world that happens in these spaces.
How do you create the conditions? You talked about it a little bit, but this thing about transformation, so not just with anger, but if I go into a training with 20 people I don't know, how can you create the conditions where I can really bring forth things that I don't even know about that need to be transformed?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an idea of how this mechanism works? Because I see it all the time, that people come in thinking, oh, I'm going to work on this thing, and then all of a sudden these other things start bubbling up.
Yeah. There's so much more intelligence than in our bodies than most people give their bodies credit for. The part of being born and growing up in this modernity, this modern culture, is that, okay, all that is, the only things that are logical, that I can understand, and I can put in my kind of not insane sense in my head, are the things that are worth doing, that are worth pursuing. And so in everything that is not rational, that doesn't have a clear, sane reason, I better not take any interest in it. But actually, our bodies have their own agenda, have their own intelligence, and they would actually, the person that comes into these spaces, the only thing that they need to do is not necessarily just completely fight the space. They can still have inquiry, they can still ask questions, but the person is really invited to directly experience their bodies, directly experience, and that there's no way of doing this wrong. Like in school, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. In transformative spaces, there's no wrong answer, because the territory is you, is your body, is your life, and no one can be better at being you than you. And so I'm basically, as a space holder, as a trainer, I am a guardian of the space, so that encouraging people to get out of the concept, to get out of what if this happens, and say, okay, let's see, how will you know if this happens if you don't try it? And so encouraging people to practice little by little, not like jumping the Grand Canyon, but just doing a step by step, and getting closer and closer to their own intelligence of their own bodies, the physical body, the emotional body, the intellectual body too, but also the energetic body too, which is this kind of sense of timing and my own rhythm and space. It's our personal space, and there's a subtlety about how do I experience it. This person's super close to me, they're invading my space, or I'm invading their own space, having also experienced that there's something, so that's most of the times their bodies are screaming real clear information and messages for them, and they just have never thought of listening, that they didn't have the language to listen to their bodies. And so that's what happens. And so it's not like in these training spaces, we don't give another dogma or a big philosophy or a methodology for people to follow. Not at all. Anything that we say in these training spaces are just like are like a t-shirt. You just put it on and see how it looks, how it feels to be wearing that t-shirt, or just like putting a pair of glasses, and how does it look? How does life look? Do I get more possibilities than before? Do I get less? And then you can choose them. I'm not going to use that anymore. But This work, it's not even 98% of the times, it's like 10 out of 10 when people really do the practice, they really do an experiment and really experience their bodies. 10 out of 10, it completely changes their lives. It's suddenly seeing color, it's like really suddenly seeing for the first time, wow, this is why I have emotions. This is why I have intuition. I've been trying to push this back, and actually it makes so much sense that that's why I have a heart. And it's just incredible. And that's this kind of things is just really what makes me want to do this and share it with everyone. And but most of all, empowering people to share that with their people, because the whole work is copyleft, is so it's really free to be used. You can apply it in whatever workforce you have, whatever project, art project, business project, just apply it and see what happens.
Yeah, I hear this thing from participants or potential participants quite often of, I don't want to be told how to live my life, or what happens if I don't really believe in a lot of this stuff that goes on.
Mhm.
So can you talk about the difference between, this experimentation following wisdom? Does any of it have like, and this fear of belief or being told? How is this training space different than say a school?
Yeah, it's incredible. I think this, so many people have this real reaction to schooling, and also cultists, because there's so many, I mean, there's a whole history of cults where it's kind of which is kind of like schooling, but exponentially stronger occult, which whereas there's a right way of thinking, there's a right way of doing, there's a right way of answering, and if you're not doing this, then you're not worthy enough, then you're not, you don't belong, all of these things that it's kind of preying on the insecurities of people to get them to control them, to behave in a certain way. And I think most people have had experiences of this from school to a job, and even with their friends, even in relationships, there can be this kind of manipulation. And so really the whole body of work of possibility management is about empowering yourself. So it's not about it's about reclaiming your own self-authority, which is your own agency, your own power to say no, to say yes, to start things, to stop. And so people are encouraged from the first day to really say the thing that they need to say, even if it's a thing that destabilizes the room, even if it's a thing that might, provoke the space holder, because the most important thing is to try things, to really experiment, and then see how it feels. Because if we don't experiment, because we're if you're not experiment because you're afraid of it going wrong, then you're not ever going to develop that competence. And so it's really one of the hallmarks, like real basics of the work of possibility management, is to develop your own sense of agency. And so everything that we say, I in my trainings, I'm pretty much every day saying, don't believe anything that I say, just try it out. And it's your experience that's going to tell you if you're going to do it or if you're not going to do it. And I'm not in the business of brainwashing, really. It's more of a upgrading. It's not about all the things that you know how to do. It's that they're worthless, that they should be just basically burned and destroyed. No, you have access to all of the technologies, all of the strategies. For example, we do this a lot in emotional healing processes. So an emotional healing process is a process that uses the emotions, the heart, and the heart, not the mind, not the logical mind, not the memories. It's the emotional body that takes you into the origin of that trauma, of that, we don't call it traumas, we call it more like an unfinished business, an incomplete communication, an incomplete event that happened in your life, and you did not know how to process, either because you were too young, or you didn't have the tools, or the circumstances weren't conducive to that. And so it stays like an open wound. And because it stays like an open wound, most people will find coping mechanisms, survival strategies, like smiling when you're sad. Like a lot of women have this, that they're sad or they're scared, and they kind of lift their shoulders and start giggling. It's like, haha, oh yeah, I'm a mess, or oh yeah, my life is a misery, right? Like it's miserable right now, and they're smiling. And this is a coping mechanism, usually so that the person doesn't feel the length or the intensity of the pain that they have, but also, in a lot of the times, is so that the other person that they're speaking to doesn't feel awkward, doesn't feel fear, doesn't feel anything when they're sharing what's in their heart. So it's a strategy to not have another person feel empathically, which is so insane. But it makes sense in a society or in an upbringing where feeling sad or feeling scared is actually not so welcome. And so when you going through this process of an emotional healing process, and you go through these trainings and initiations, you go through the feelings and emotions, and you are given an opportunity to expand your repertoire. So instead of just using this strategy of laughing it off, laughing all of the things that you're not okay with, you are giving, okay, so what about this perspective? What about this was something that I used to do because I did not know how to be sad with another person. But now I'm learning. I'm learning that I can be sad with my friends. I can be sad with strangers. And it's suddenly the person starts really relaxing. Like I'm practicing not smiling. Not because I don't want to smile, but I'm practicing not doing the fake smile over things. I mean, I've spoken with women. It was probably the most life-changing experiment that they did as young women, particularly. And so it's not about, like, the person that changes, they still have access to smiling, they still have access to do these gestures, but they just have access to even more tools. So we don't brainwash people, we just expand their tool set, let's say.
Can you can you tell me about your own transformations? What are some of the expansions that you've gone through in your own experimentation?
Wow. So I grew up in Europe. I grew up in Portugal, and when I came into this work of possibility management, I had already done quite a few kind of alternative things in my life. So I had moved to the northeast of Scotland to live in a spiritual eco village called Finhorn, and I lived there for 10 years. And that's quite a radical thing. Most people don't do that. You might go backpacking throughout the world, but live in an eco village, in a spiritual place, especially if you're from the south of Europe, to live right where it's really cold, it's not very common. And so I've throughout my life, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to go through many different spaces of transformation. But even before I found the work of possibility management, I was still very insecure. I did not know. One of the biggest things, because I used to go to kind of like tantra workshops for many years, and one of the things that I would be asked to do is to feel myself, to feel the core of myself. And I kid you not, every week I would get out in the middle of this 1 hour and a half tantra conscious sexuality space, trying to feel myself, and I start crying, freak out, just go like, I can't feel myself, I don't know where I am, and just run out the door crying, and then slowly come back and practice and practice. And I did this for a few years. And so this, I still didn't have this sense of like, where's this self? Where's this self that how do I find this core? And I would always be looking outside of myself for answers. And that's what I was a workshop junkie, basically. I would go to every single workshop about anything. And I would love being in groups because I had this sense of transformation happening, but it still wouldn't ground completely inside myself. And when I did the Expand the Box training back in 2016, it totally changed my life. There was something about the distinctions, the things that were being said that were really landing as I've experienced this. I've experienced this too. I've experienced this too. It was someone was speaking directly to my body, not to my mind, was really to my body. And then I did this practice of bringing being centered, or of really finding my energetic center, the core of my energetic body, and aligning all my body. So it's almost like to sit aligned, where I'm not falling and reaching out for something and running after something, but I'm also not avoiding anything. I'm just here and I'm present and I'm alive. And it was such a simple practice that I, for days, could not believe that this was so simple. Like a person had done this for 3 years, trying to find their center, but it was just magical when I did the practice. And the facilitator said, "Okay, how do you feel?" And I even then I looked at them and said, well, "Is this being centered?" And he wasn't answering. He was not giving me any answer, because that would be teaching. He would say, "How does that feel?" And so I had to look to the experience that I was having while being centered and describe it. And that's when I realized it's here. It's always been here, the access to my own center. And so I build that capacity more and more. And since then, it comes from here. I'm no longer giving the authority or power over me to anybody, partner or parent or any kind of authority figure. No, the authority for doing what I want comes from me. And I went through all these different emotional healing processes, even one where I declared, I will do whatever I want, even if I don't earn any money and I die earlier, because I'd rather live 2 years, 1 year doing this amazing life that I choose than live 30 years living someone else's life. And those decisions really changed completely. Now I only do really what I love. Like it really, that's why I often get into tears. I only really do what I love. Yeah.
That sounds pretty amazing to me.
And I want more people to also find that. That's part of my vocation, is to get that, to everyone to have that opportunity to live from that center, not from anyone else's rules, but from your own experience, from your own backing, and also with this feeling the support that exists, that the whole, your bodies give you, the feeling the support of the earth itself, of life itself. It's not spiritual. It's not like some kind of I don't know, fantasy world new age thing. It's really practical events that really support me to be here. It's yeah, I don't know, it's really incredible.
And at the same time, I hear from some people that, well, they don't want this. This isn't what they're after, this thing of really doing only what I love. Actually, my sister talks to me sometimes and says, well, it sounds really great to chase after that, but well, the things I'm focused on are, XYZ, having a better relationship, or actually, I like my job, but how do I enjoy my job more? Is this work for people that either really want to come through this big shift of finding their own center? Is that who this work is for? Do you make such a distinction?
Mhm. So, on one hand, this work can be for anyone, as long as you have a body, as long as you have consciousness and you can in some way communicate. It doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter what culture you live in, because this is about experience. It's about initiations are about going through something real, not conceptual, not through a book. You go through a process and you are changed because you went through that process. So on that, from that side, it can be really for anybody. And not everybody wants transformation, and not everyone wants to awaken that way, and that's totally fine. It's also, I'm I'm not branding possibility management as this is the solution, because I think there's many paths, many different paths, and in some ways this is just one that for me it is really clear. It's not conceptual. It brings people to their own power. It's not like multi-level marketing where I get into something and then I become indebted and I have to grab all my friends to be part of or belong. It's not like a cult where your money goes, all to this organization. No, in this work, you are encouraged to earn your money, to create your own work, to find out the thing that it is. Also, not just quit your job after you've done one training or two trainings. No, ground the transformation. Find out by yourself, with your team, what is your next step. And little by little, it would only go, this work is only really great for people who love this, who love discovering, who really feel that there's something else, there's something more out there, that is possible, and it's just a little bit out of their reach. But if they reach out, or if there's something that they're not seeing, or something that they're not stretching, or there's something that they're still not getting, they can get there. And so a friend of mine calls it that this is like climbing a mountain. So because the work and transformation and personal development, it's never really over, because as long as you exist, there's always things that you can transform. And so if you like climbing mountains, then you would like transformation also. Because this is the purpose of possibility management isn't to fix anyone. It's not about seeing life as a problem that has to be fixed. It's about being in life as a creative experiment, where instead of having 3 colors to paint, we can have 10,000 colors to paint. But if you're okay with having 3 colors, that's totally fine. You do you. But for the people who want to find other colors and other ways of painting, it's not with a brush. It could be with the hand. It could be with the face. It could be with the elbow. Then and paint what? What about painting outside the canvas? Then for these people, possibility management is the most entertaining hobby on earth, and certainly is mine.
Cool. Thank you so much, Vera. That feels like a great place to end this. And I'll just say this analogy with the colors, I think, comes in part from the last training I organized. One of our participants said, just at the very end, this experience has been like seeing the world in color for the first time and never having known that colors existed. So if this sounds interesting, there's a training again, May 25th to 29th in Northern California. You can reach out to me. And then also Vera is a great resource for any further questions if what you heard turned you on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dawe, for making this conversation happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Vera.
Thank you.